Hello everyone, I record this video today. It's been quite possibly the weirdest 2.5 weeks of my life because I have just come from the most intense 9-month training block of my life to then completing an Ironman, to then moving flats, to then going to Ironman Barcelona to watch clients. And I feel like this is the first moment since everything's happened that, well, this week, that I've properly just been able to like sit, reflect and think, which is crazy. But I'm going to record for you a full debrief of Ironman Italy, and before this you will have seen lots of little clips of me completing the event, so hopefully that gives you a little bit of an insight to how it's all gone as well. But I feel like I was looking for this video before I signed up to the event. Like, I was looking for someone to talk me through, first of all, what Ironman Italy was like, because there's so many forums, Facebook pages that scared the living daylight out of me, and it was way better than I ever imagined. But I also want to give my experience of doing an Ironman and a bit about my experience from my background as well, and just how I found it all too, because I think 2.5 weeks later I've managed to like really take it in and reflect and look over each part of the event too. So without further ado, welcome to Ironman Italy race debrief. I think I'm just gonna need to like clear the throat a little bit. There's honestly just so much to say, so much to say. So let's start with the kind of couple of days before. So a couple of days before, and I'll insert some clips as well. I'll either do the clips before or like here, so you can kind of see what I'm talking about as I'm talking along with it. So I actually flew into Venice, and myself and Marcus ordered a hire car from Venice, where we drove, I think it was like 2 and a bit hours down to Servia. Now you can fly into Bologna, which is a little bit closer, but we personally found the best dates wise worked with us going into Venice, because we flew on the Thursday and then came home the Tuesday. And from my experience as well, like, I was actually really grateful that we had a car, because where we stayed in Servia, which is where the event was like 10 minutes, well, it was like half an hour walk from the event itself because the way it's laid out, but maybe like 5-ish, 8 minutes drive. But where we were staying, like, I liked that you could kind of go into the hub of like the Ironman atmosphere and like really be a part of it. But then, because I was so nervous, because this is my first ever Ironman and first big triathlon event, like coming back to the hotel and kind of being away from the thick of it and calming my nerves helped too. So yeah, that's what we did. I personally really liked it, and it's definitely an option if you can't find cheaper flights into Bologna. So yeah, that's what we did. I arrived on the Thursday and the event was the Saturday, which for me was plenty of time, because I think if I'd arrived too many days before, I think I would have had too many days to like just kind of spiral in my head a little bit about the event, and I was already feeling so nervous that I thought 2 days before is perfect. And we got there, I met with my friend Chloe, and I'll insert some clips. Chloe's done a lot of Ironman events before, so she was kind of able to just calm my nerves a little bit and just kind of show me the ropes. So we checked in, and essentially what you do when you check in is you go and get your number, and you get a little wristband with your number on it. You get a rucksack, and you get some bits in that too, alongside your swimming cap, which will be the one you put on to start your swim. And yeah, just got some pictures. Unfortunately, the expo was actually shut because the weather in Italy was so bad, but it was open the next day, so I still managed to get some bits from the merch shop. But yeah, it was a good experience. I felt like Italy was maybe a little bit less organised than when I've previously been with Marcus to Wales and Copenhagen, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that the weather was really bad, so they probably struggled to set everything up. And I kind of liked it too, because I've actually never done an event abroad. Like, all of my previous events I've done have been within the UK, and I guess it was just very like real and raw and authentic seeing that kind of setup as well. So yeah, pretty much after that went back to the hotel and got ready for Friday. Now on Friday I essentially went back to meet some of my friends that were also doing Ironman Italy, and we went for a little practice swim. Now, this was probably single-handedly the best and worst thing that we could have done. I'll insert some clips here because it was the choppiest swim you would have ever seen in your whole entire life. Like, we tried to go in and genuinely, me even breaststroking couldn't get anywhere against those waves. And there was groups of people and, you know, confident swimmers in other groups beside us, and I was like, do you think the swim is going to be on if it's like this? And they were like, no way, because the lifeboats won't be able to like rescue anyone in need because the waves will be so choppy, so it would then be a risk for us, which it wouldn't then go ahead. And we were having so many discussions, and like some of us were like, yeah, we wouldn't be mind if our swim was cut short, but like for me, because I had trained 3 swims per week for my whole training, I'd really like pushed myself outside my comfort zone with this. I wanted to do the whole distance. Like, I didn't want to do 1.5k, I didn't want to do like no swim at all. I would have actually even preferred if they just made like a loop that was like 200 meters out and back, just so that I could do the swim. But luckily it was much calmer on the day. But yeah, it kind of gave me a bit of mixed emotions going into Saturday. The rest of the day we honestly just chilled, relaxed, checked my bike in, and just ate. And that's pretty much what we did the day before. So it's very relaxed, just got our stuff organised. But I'm not gonna lie, like when I went to sleep, I was so nervous. Like, I just, in my head, I was like, this is it. Like, you were literally doing it. You're gonna face your fears. You're attacking everything head on. Tomorrow is the day. And that just feels very real and very scary. Yeah, anyway, on to the real debrief, because I know that's what we're all here for. So, Italy swim is a sea swim, and it is 1 loop, so it's a 3.8k. So it's kind of like this shape. So out, along, in. I don't know if that makes any sense. But I think it was like 0.8k. I'm actually going to put up a picture of what the swim was like on the Ironman website. But yeah, sea swim and 1 loop for Italy. Now, the vibes in the morning were immaculate. The sea had calmed down a lot. It was still wavy, but it was significantly better than what it was the other day. In Ironman Italy actually put on their Instagram, please do not go in the water the day before, because there was like branches that were in the water and it was so choppy. I think they were just basically saying that so that they could clear the water a little bit, and so it wasn't going to knock people's confidence, or people weren't going to go in the sea and do anything silly when no one and lifeguards and everything weren't there. Now, I was the most anxious about the swim just because it was the one that I was completely new at to start with. I hadn't really done it since school. I'd done a lot of training, so I was really confident that I could swim 3.8k, and I'd done it in the swimming pool before, and I'd done a lot of outdoor swimming in a local kind of lake area, and I'd done 1 sea swim before, which I managed to come out of, which was my only real goal. It was probably the one I went in most confident to that I could cover that mileage, which is crazy because I would never have thought that I would ever have said that. It was a wetsuit swim, which again was one of my worries before because the temperature of Italy was quite high this year, and it was a worry that it was going to be non-wetsuit. And essentially what the wetsuit does is it keeps you afloat, especially in the sea. It keeps you more buoyant, which just means that you're able to float a lot easier, and it gives you a little boost when you're swimming. And I don't know, there's just something about it that makes me feel a bit more confident in the sea with it. I think because it's just like holding you together, you know? So yeah, went in my pen and I started in the 120 to 130 pen, which 120 is a lot faster than I thought I was going to swim it, but I thought maybe I could kind of draft someone, which would help me increase my speed. Now, drafting is allowed in swimming, but it's not allowed in the bike. And the drafting essentially is when you swim either on someone's feet or on someone's hip, and you essentially get a little bit of their suction because they are breaking the water and you're kind of like going in behind them, and it can help you conserve energy. Now, I didn't actually end up doing that for most of the swim because I found that in the sea, like, we all just got so far apart that it was quite hard to actually draft off someone. Anyway, that was my pen, and I didn't actually, so the start time was 7:30. I didn't actually get in the water till 8:30, so I was waiting for an hour in my pen, which if I was to do the event next year and it just had 1 start time, I definitely would probably take myself out of the pen and then go in a little bit later. So yeah, in my pen, got to the start line and they said go, and I ran in the water. And Italy starts with like 100 meters, like wade out into the water before you actually start the swim. So I literally just waded out until I could no longer really stand, and then that's when I started swimming. Now, I think that helped me as well because I was able to like compose myself, and I was like, right, you're gonna go into your swim now rather than just straight swim. Now, I had built this swim up in my head massively, and especially at the start I was told that there's lots of kicking and there's lots of aggression. Maybe it was because I was in the 120 to 130, which is obviously a little bit slower than the top dogs who are really competing in the swim. But I experienced none of that. I thought everyone was really respectful, and in fact, when there was people bumping into me, which it was never aggressive, it was just a little bump, they would look back and they say, I'm sorry. And the same with me, like I'd sometimes bump into someone and I was like, I'm sorry, and they were like, it's fine. So if you are going into this with my mindset where you are just wanting to complete it and you're not going to be competitively racing the swim, don't worry about that, because I was really worried about it, and it was really friendly and it was completely fine. But I started the swim, and you go out that way to start with. The waves are kind of coming to the side of us, so basically I breathe from my left side, which made it a little bit harder. Now I know there'll be people listening to this and being like, you were literally supposed to breathe out of both sides. I get that, but I didn't. So it's my own fault. But for me, it made it harder to kind of get in the groove because the waves were kind of coming towards me, which made when I was taking my breath a little bit harder. But I just composed myself. I did a couple of strokes with my head above the water, and just took it boy by boy. I just thought, get to the next boy, get to the next boy, get to the next boy. And every boy that I did was a win. I never looked behind me at any point, which is something that I didn't want to do, because look back, because I just thought, you're going forward, and forward is the only way you need to look, and you just need to take it boy by boy by boy. Anyway, turned at the triangle boy, so completed the first bit, which is just under a kilometre, and the waves were then behind me. Now, I had the best 2 kilometre swim of my whole entire life. My paces, which I'm going to put up here so you can really see the breakdown of them, I was hitting 2 minute per 100 metres, which is unheard of for me. Like, that's so fast for me, and it's because the waves were behind me. So again, like if you're being put off Ironman events because of the sea can massively work in your favour. Like it massively worked in my favour there. I would have never been able to pull off those paces. So I was swimming. I was looking at my watch and it was saying like 10 minutes per 500 metres, which when I'm doing my swims in the lake, they're usually about 13 to 14 per 500 metres, for 13 to 14 minutes. So I was like, oh my god, I'm absolutely flying. I was like, I'm gonna get an Olympics a lot after this. And I loved that bit. I had a really good time and I was just really, really confident. It did feel long, but again, just took it boy by boy, turned around the boy, and then the waves were then coming to the side of you again, which made it a lot harder because they were again just kind of like pushing you a little bit to the side, kind of like that first bit. And then we turned around the next boy, and then you were going this way. Now that's when we were working against the waves. So we were wanting to go this way, the waves are coming this way. That bit was really tough. Like I actually felt that bit physically quite tough, and I actually did a lot of that bit breaststroke. Now it did impact my pace. Like my pace dropped down to 2:59 per 100 meters, which is nearly a 3 minute, which is like a whole minute difference. It's crazy that the waves can make that impact, but obviously I was a bit more fatigued by that point too, and that felt really long. Like again, I was just like, just get to the next boy, just get to the next boy, just get to the next boy. But by this point I could hear the crowds and everyone cheering, and I could see like the Ironman arch, even though it was about a kilometre away by this point. I was like, Sophia, you're gonna do this, you do just need to keep going, and even if it's slow, it doesn't matter, just keep going and you're gonna do this. Now throughout the whole swim, I felt extremely confident with the boats, with the support, with the kayaks. There was so much support there, and actually at one point when the waves were coming towards me, I was like, I might just hold on to the kayak for a little minute. I didn't end up doing that, but I felt completely like I could have done that if I wanted to. And turned around the last boy, and it was like 500 meters by that point. I'm gonna not cry in this, but the emotions that you feel, and I think because they're just like all a compiling effect of like all that time that you have spent training is then in that moment, and it's just amazing. Like, it just feels so good. And with Italy, obviously I had that 100-meter wade out to start with, and it had that at the end as well, so I could literally see people like a stone throw away, like running back into the shore, and I was like, oh my god, that's gonna be me in a minute. And I kept like trying to see if I could feel the sand on my feet yet, and I was like, no, not yet, no, not yet. Then I felt it, and I was like, I've done it. I've actually done the swim. Like, 9 months ago at the end of last year, me could not swim 2 lengths without absolutely gasping for breath. Like, I'd not swam since school, my technique still isn't great, but what I did do is I consistently showed up, I followed a plan, and I believed in the process, and I came out of the swim and I was like, I've done it. And I literally got the biggest smile on my face. Again, I'll insert the clips when I come out of that swim, because I just think I'm in disbelief that I've actually done it. Another thing that I was really worried about with Italy was that there was going to be jellyfish, because again, I'd read on forums, people were like, look at my jellyfish sting, and there were so many jellyfish, and people were saying there were sea walnuts, and I was literally, again, doing everything that you shouldn't do before an event and catastrophizing the fact that there was going to be jellyfish. There was no jellyfish, so again, don't worry about that. I'm out of the swim, couldn't believe it. We're going into T1. T1 is where you get out of your swim stuff, get your bike, and get cycling. And so I actually came out to swim bang on 1:30, which is exactly what I predicted, and it evened out the paces of me going fast and me going slow. Fine. Then it was time for T1. Now, T1 is where you transition from your swim stuff into your cycle stuff, and you pick up your bike and you hit the road. And T1 was, so you came out to swim, sat down, I put some salty Pringles in my bag, which, if you've not seen the video already, it has gone slightly viral. There was also women sharing my Pringles, which I absolutely loved, because I was like, it just brings a sense of like normality and non-seriousness to the Ironman, which, like, I feel like I was so nervous going in, because I was like, such an elite level sport, and I don't know if I'll be able to do it, and maybe, you know, all these different thoughts, but it's the best event I think I've ever, well, it is the best event that I've ever done, and I didn't feel as intense as I thought it was going to feel, essentially. So yeah, had some salty Pringles, got out my swim stuff, put my cycle stuff on, and hit T1. Now, in T1 is the longest transition I've ever seen in my life. I haven't obviously seen a lot, but it was a long transition. My kind of goal with that was to eat my Pringles, to get into my stuff and get on my bike as quickly as I could. Now, you run down this really long corridor, I guess as such, outside. What I did was there was flags for this hotel which were in line with my bike. I just thought, look for those flags and then you'll find your bike, because there's thousands and thousands of bikes, and my bike is black and it literally looks like everyone else's bikes. So I was like, you're gonna have to find something that's easy to spot, that then you can get your bike. So did that, grabbed my bike, ran out of transition. Again, I'll keep the clips coming here, and headed onto my bike. Now, the bike was the one that I was most underprepared for, I would say. Like, I got my bike in July, and I kind of had July with it, August with it, and September was the event. I was on my mum's bike before it, and I was using the watt bike as well during this time, but altogether I would say the bike was my weakest discipline, just purely for the amount of experience that I had on it and how my training had gone. And yeah, I feel like it should have been the one that I was most nervous for after reflecting. But Ironman Italy was relatively flat. Although they said that it was going to be pancake flat, it did end up just being short of 1,000 meters of elevation overall. The bike I just took, I would say that I raced smart would be the best way to describe it. So I started with 2 bottles with electrolytes and carbs, and then also had my gels and my blocks that I use when I'm training, and I just aim to fuel every 30-ish minutes, getting something down me and sipping my water with electrolytes and carbs the whole time. Now, I would say I did all that great during the cycle. I did stop a few times during the cycle. I stopped once to pee, and I stopped a few times at aid stations just to gather my thoughts and pee again a few times more. which again was so okay to do. And because during my long cycles I'd done that, whether it been at traffic lights or just had a little moment to myself, I knew that like my bum comfiness was better when I did that, and it just helped me mentally break up a little bit. So again, if you're going into this and you're a similar ability to me and you're scared that you can't stop, I stopped and my average pace was still around 26.2. It was definitely my weakest discipline of all three. I'm not saying that I'm a fast cyclist at all, because I'm definitely not, but I completed it, and that was the only thing that I wanted and needed to achieve out of that, and that was my time with those stops. So I still think that was pretty respectable regarding that as well. And with my experience of cycling going into it, I genuinely think that was the best I could have done with the experience and training that I had behind me. Out, and then you're coming back, and it is kind of a little bit undulating at points, and there is a big hill which you do twice, which is really tough actually, like a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I think I went in just thinking it's going to be really, really flat and it's going to be completely fine, but the hill was hard. Like I was pushing my max up that hill. So yeah, something worth considering. And the second time I was doing the hill, the first time I was doing it, I was thinking, how are you going to get up the second time? Because the hill was roughly 65k into the cycle. I knew that I'd be doing it again 130k in, and I was like, your legs are going to be burst. But we got up twice, and we did it. And like I said, that was the only thing that I wanted to do. Other things worth considering during Ironman events is when you pick up water from the aid stations, essentially the volunteers just have their hands out like this, and then you are cycling and you grab the water like that. And my friend Chloe told me that to decrease your body temperature, you need to pour water on yourself. So I would get water from the aid stations, which were roughly about every 30k. I'd pour half of it on me and I would drink half of the water, and then you would chuck it. And there was like boxes where you could chuck the water in, so even if it was slightly outside those boxes or beside it, it's better doing that than just chucking it off the race, because you can actually get disqualified for doing that. I found the cycle completely fine. I tried to spend as much time on my aero bars as I could, but I didn't really practice much of that in training just because it's hard to do that in Edinburgh, so it was a bit of a different position and feeling for me. Now, in Italy, people were cycling 3 abreast, so like you were cycling and there was people to the right of me and people to the left of me, and I'm not the most confident cyclist, so I was coming out of my bars when people were doing that just to gain a little bit more control of my bike and have a bit more confidence over it. So yeah, that's something worth considering too. There's constantly people overtaking and you're undertaking and overtaking and undertaking. There was people drafting off me at one point too, which honestly, like, I wanted to turn around and say, please stop. And that was purely not because I didn't want them to take my energy, but I just wanted to be like, I'm not the most confident cyclist, like I might brake and I might swerve, and that wasn't sitting that well with me. But the only way someone could get told off for drafting is if a referee comes by, notices it, and then gives them a blue card for a warning, and then they get a yellow card, and that's actually a penalty, and they'll have to stand to the side for a certain amount of minutes. Drafting is when you cycle really closely behind another cyclist's wheels, so you essentially, again, like the swim, you get a bit of their wind draft, so the front person breaks the wind and you kind of get sucked in behind them, so they'll have to output less energy than you are. And they can still go at the same speed as you, which obviously is a bit frustrating when you're the one pushing at the front. It's fine when you're out cycling with your friends, but when it's someone you don't really know and you're not the most confident cyclist, I didn't love that. But in respect, I should have just turned around and said, can you please just overtake me or just drop back a bit? I completed it. I cried a few times, but it was almost in disbelief. Like, I think when I was at 150k, I was like, so you're gonna do it? And I was sobbing in my glasses. I had no idea like what average pace I was going. I just went in a bit clueless, so I would definitely make sure my like Garmin was set with the paces and everything on it, so I could roughly see where I was sitting at with everything, because I just had the maps up and I was kind of clueless about everything else, but I was intuitively doing it and I raced smart, so yeah. But I fueled up well on the bike. Towards the end, I was in a lot of pain. It was mainly in my feet, my bum, my upper back, which is usually, my bum and my upper back is usually the areas that do get quite sore. Your upper back, just because you're constantly like this or in this position, that it's just putting a lot of pressure on your upper back. And even though I've had the most amazing bike fit and, you know, everything was really good in training, it's just the length of time that I was on my bike, because the longest cycle I did before that was 120k, so it's quite a significant jump from to the event. And my bum was really sore from the seat, but again, I think that's just natural because you're on the seat for such a long time and it's not gonna feel the best. And my feet were the thing that was most sore, which is weird because I didn't think of that before, but I didn't wear cleats until quite late on in my training, and with cleats, like, essentially, if you look at your foot like that, the cleat is here on your cycling shoe, and so you're putting most pressure through that area, and essentially it literally felt like plantar fasciitis, if you've ever had that before. I was literally diagnosing myself with an injury. I was like, you've got plantar fasciitis, a sore back and a sore butt. But yeah, that was the cycle course. It was nice. I loved, to be honest, I really enjoyed a lot of parts of that course, and at 90k I experienced my first ever bike high. I was literally having the time of my life, like I was loving it, and I was like, you do like cycling, I love this. So yeah, it was just a journey, and you know, I loved the route. I thought it was amazing. I thought it was a really good course for my ability as well, because like I said, mostly was flat. There was signposts everywhere, there was always people next to you can't really get lost, and there's also a lot of like motorcycles and stuff going around, so like if something did go wrong, you got a puncture or you fell off your bike or something, like I knew that people would be there relatively soon. So again, made me feel really confident and made me feel like there was people always looking. So yeah, something to consider if you will get overtaken a lot, because especially if you're going into it with a road bike, a lot of people have TT bikes and those bikes are just naturally a little bit faster. So if you're the same ability as someone and they've got a TT bike and you don't, they're going to be faster than you. Obviously, if you're better on the bike but you've got a road bike and someone's got a TT bike, you'll be faster than them. But it's something worth considering, because I did get overtaken a lot on the bike and that's fine, but it is something to know mentally that you will get overtaken a lot if you are similar ability to me. And the only thing I wished is that there was a bit more crowds at the top of the hill cheering, because that hill was savage and I felt like you just needed like a little pick-me-up after that. By this point when I got off the bike, it was pretty hot, and the last like 20k of the bike, my stomach wasn't right. I think like being in that hunched position just like crumples everything in your stomach, and I just wasn't feeling that great. And I kept thinking, you're gonna have to run a marathon, and I was just like, how are you gonna do that? But I was like, you're gonna have to do it. So it's just all happened so quickly that you don't really realise what is happening. Got off my bike, my feet were in a lot of pain. Hopefully the clip you'll have seen earlier where I'm talking to Marcus shows how much pain I was in.
How are you feeling? What's sore?
My feet are really sore.
Your feet?
Like the middle.
Okay, listen.
I think it was my cleat.
I hate to break it to you, but you got a marathon to run now.
That feels good.
Okay, so game plan is you
I'm
can.
just gonna take my time here.
Okay.
Take my time.
No, you don't fancy running.
Like 6 times.
You don't fancy running. Svea.
Not yet. Can I take my cleats off?
No, you have to keep them on.
That hill. Nice.
But I just took my time through transition 2, dropped off my bike, ate some more Pringles, got my running stuff on, and just thought, you're gonna have to get running, so get running, girl. Now, the marathon was 4 10 point something K loops. It was completely flat. I loved the route, and I loved the fact that it was loops. I loved it, and it's so weird because like you would think, oh my god, doing a marathon and just doing 4 loops, like that is so tough, but I think like the purpose of the Ironman marathon isn't like the other marathons. So like you might think of a marathon and think, oh my god, that's such a long way and that's really, really scary that that's just casually dumped at the end of an Ironman. But it's not the same vibe. Like I feel like I would go into a marathon thinking you're going to run this as absolutely fast as you can, but with an Ironman marathon, well again because it was my first one, you can't run it as fast as you could run a flat out marathon. That's just facts, because you're going into it after swimming for 3.8k and cycling for 180. You're not feeling that fresh. That point for me was 7-8 hours into the race. I was already 7-8 hours down. So yeah, you kind of just need to accept that and just run. Rather than running really, really hard, you just run to the best ability that you can. I started out, I kind of had the idea in my head that I wanted to run a sub 4 marathon, and it was slightly silly of me because I didn't manage to do that, but we live and we learn, and I adapted to circumstances. But yeah, the loops I really liked because you kind of knew where you were at each point, and I knew like, okay, this is how I feel at the end of lap 2, like this is how lap 3 is probably going to go. And you could check in with yourself, and for people supporting, it meant that you saw them so much. Like I saw Marcus so many times throughout that event, and at one point he was just literally like cycling along beside the group. It's very casual, and I think the marathon was the hardest part, but one of my favourite parts of the race. A lot of it's shaded as well, and I love the route from Italy, so yeah, thanks Italy. So yeah, the first 2 loops went really, really well. I averaged a 1:57. The only thing, sorry, a 1:57, so sub 2 half marathon. My stomach was getting really, really bad. It would progressively get worse and worse and worse as the run would go on. And the best way I can describe it is it felt like somebody had a knife and they were stabbing it inside me.
Taking any coke?
I can't like breathe without wanting to be sick.
Okay. You just gotta keep going though, see those legs? Yeah, keep turning them over.
Yeah, they'll keep going.
You've gotta keep going, right?
I'll be fine.
See if you sit at this pace, you'll be fine.
My legs actually feel okay.
If you're fine.
Well,
You need to take on fuel though, okay?
And it was a lot of pain, and it wasn't pain I've experienced before, because pain that I've experienced before when I've been running is digestive related issues. So like I'll be running and I'll be eating a gel and I'll just not sat right with me, and then I'll feel like I need the toilet. But it wasn't that. It was like this stabbing pain that actually made me think, I actually don't know if I'm well right now. Obviously you're so gone, like your brain is gone. I actually saw Paige, who some of you might already know her, she was doing the same event with me, and she screamed at me like at the, I think it was the 3rd loop in, and she was like, come on Sophia, and like I looked around at her and I was like, and I'd literally been with her the day before, and I was like, who is that? And then like a couple of minutes later I was like, oh my god, that was Paige. But I think your brain is just so frazzled and just like has no energy left to give that you just think one foot in front of the other and get this run done. So I hadn't actually managed to get much down me fueling wise in the first 2 loops. The only thing I had done was, there's essentially aid stations every 2.5k. At these aid stations they had water, electrolytes, they had Coke and bananas and Morton gels and Morton bars. To start with, I was kind of like running through the aid stations. I'd take a water, put water on my head, or take a Coke, which I know sounds really bizarre, but because I was struggling to eat my gels, I just thought that has calories in it and it's carbs and it'll be something that I could get down even if I don't manage to get my gels down.
so
Coke.
and I can't really.
Coke, you need to drink
I've had this
Coke.
the whole time.
Sophia, you need to Coke and food. Next aid station, Coke, okay?
Okay.
You have to have it, you have to have it. Like,
I've only got banana.
So I was halfway through. I hadn't really managed to get many gels down. That stabbing pain in my stomach was getting worse and worse and worse. And by loop 3, every 2.5k aid station, I was just wetting myself. And I don't really know why it happened, the only conclusion I can really come to is that I think I maybe overtook electrolytes, because my brain was going a bit fuzzy. There was that stabbing pain that almost felt like it was in my kidney. And I genuinely thought my body was going to fail before my brain was going to fail, which I just have never experienced before. And I guess that was quite scary, because I think it was on my last loop. And again, I think I'd managed to get, and I'm not proposing that I had a great run. I'm proposing that I got through the run, but you shouldn't replicate this. But equally, I don't know what I could have done differently, apart from obviously maybe take less electrolytes if that was the case. But by lap 3, I was really struggling with that pain in my stomach. And when I was breathing, it felt like I was going to be sick. And Marcus was speaking to me and he was saying things, and like I would either cry or try and speak back, and I just couldn't. Like when I'd like go like that, it felt like I was going to be sick. Like there was just something not right with my body. And by the 4th loop, I was passing through the aid station, and I was like so close to saying to one of the people, I don't feel right, like something doesn't feel right in me. But then the other half of my brain was like, you're so close, and this might not be actually something serious, and you might be completely fine, but please, let's get through this event. And if you need to go somewhere and get this scene 2 afterwards, you can go and get that scene 2 afterwards. I was like, so I'm gonna get crying again. I think I was just so determined to get to that finish line, and that's all I wanted to do. And I keep saying to people, like, the moment I came out to swim, I thought, you know, why am I crying? Why am I crying? I kept saying to people, the moment I come out to swim, I know that I'm going to become an Ironman that day. But I genuinely didn't think I was going to become an Ironman until the last 1K of that run, when I touched that red carpet and I thought, there's the finish line, you've done it. And it's so weird, because so much could change over that distance of an event. And yeah, I had a really strong good 2 laps, and then that pain in my stomach just got worse and worse and worse, to the point where I was just getting scared. And like I said, I was getting cooked down, and I was getting what I could down, but I definitely didn't eat enough during that run, as I should have. But I think, you know, maybe some solid food would have maybe helped me at that point if I had another pack of Pringles or something else packed, alongside taking less electrolytes when I was on the bike. But these things are all a learning, and this is why you do them, and this is why people probably find them addictive, because they'll go back and be like, I'm going to change this and do this differently and have a better experience. Now, I chugged through the last lap, and I ended up finishing the marathon in 4 hours 12, averaging 6:01, which on reflection, I am insanely proud of that time, and insanely proud of how I performed that after everything that I've done. Now, when I turned around that corner and saw the red carpet, like, the thing is, like, I was always like, I don't really want to finish in the dark. Like, I don't want to finish in the dark, I want to finish in the light. Like, I don't want to finish when it's, like, finishing in the dark is the best thing you can ever do. It's pitch black, there's people, there's light shining on you, there's the red carpet, there's the first timer's bell, and I just ran down it, and it was the best moment, I think, of my life. I genuinely think that was the best moment of my life. Isn't that crazy? Why are Ironman events so emotional? Like, I did not go into this to cry this much. But just in that moment, I thought, you've done this, Sophia, like, and I genuinely, right, I'm just gonna have a wee minute. I've composed myself a little bit, but I genuinely went into this Ironman, and I genuinely went into this training being so scared of all of those distances combined, being a complete beginner with the swimming and cycling, and just not knowing how I'd perform running after those disciplines, and finishing something that you didn't think that you could ever do up until you hit that red carpet was the best feeling that I've ever experienced after an event before. Because I think everything else I've gone into, I've trained really hard, but I've always, been scared of it. I've always kind of known like you'll be able to do it, and I've never been terrified of it, but I was terrified of this Ironman, and because of like those pains that I was feeling during the run, I was just so determined to get to that finish line, and I didn't want anything to take me out, and I just couldn't believe that I'd done it. I think it was just disbelief. Yeah, that's like my summary of the event. It was way harder internally than I thought it was going to be, but I had a much better time during it than I thought I was going to have. Like, I would say I enjoyed 70% of each discipline. 70% of the swim I loved, 70% of the bike I loved, especially when I had that bike high, 70% of the run I loved. It's just the last 30%, and they always say that when you're 70% done, you're actually only 20, because that's when the hard work starts, and I really think that is the case for all of them. Physically the most challenging, the bike. Second most challenging, the swim. Last most challenging, the run for me personally. That's from a physical standpoint. From an internal standpoint, with how my body was feeling, run, bike, swim. Which I guess is like, as you get more fatigued as well. That's my race debrief. Whether I'll do another one, who knows? Maybe at some point in my life. Who knows? Who knows? But that's all for now. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and tune in next week for the Q&A, where we'll go into more detail about the training and my experience and things like that. But hopefully I've not blabbed for too long too, and this is actually an enjoyable video. Yeah, thanks for following along, and thanks for tuning in, and I will catch you all next week.